Hi everyone, and welcome back to our conversation with Mr. Beka of Kernel Finance. We are now deep diving into the second segment, which is Dhande Ki Baat, wherein we'll talk a lot more about the business and try and dissect the concepts like working capital finance and try to take an overview of the MSME ecosystem from Beka. So, having said that, before we get down into the serious stuff, one quick question, right? What is the origin story for the name Kernel Finance? Like, how did you come across that?
So kernel is something that is inside the seed. People probably most humans neglect that part of the plot, so you never see it, you never thinking that it's there. So, but there's a small thing inside every seed out of everything. And I believe that our category of software, so to say, digitization and those things, whether the tax filing, accounting, whatever, like this is me being a finance wala. I believe that this is one of the most important parts of business. But again, people need to be able to neglect that in a way that their plot still grows and sticking figure out relatively. So that's where kernel comes from. So this is basically out of which a strong business grows, but you need to be able to forget about that in a sense.
Interesting. All right. So, having said that, right, let's talk a bit more about Kernel Finance and what exactly it does. So, over to you.
Yeah, sure. So I think before we get there, I need to put it. I'm sure like most of the people understand this, but want to put things in perspective and how I see generally the future shaping up. Like I mentioned earlier, that I believe that the tax reform is essential for India's journey towards becoming this tier 1 country economic wise, and GST is at the heart of that. So basically what we saw is that the government is also imposing it step by step. Until this year, until today, actually, e-invoices, for example, it's requested for anybody who has turnover of 10 crores. The 1st of August, it comes down to 5 crores, which already has some pen and paper guys who are running these legacy businesses, don't have internal accountant, and they're used to doing things manually, mostly legacy businesses. Starting from January, it comes to 1.5, actually, like that was announced this week. So this means that even more of those guys will get under the tax stress, so to say, because taxes are never pleasant, especially the implementation. And seeing that reform in my own country, in an emerging country, and that was at the heart of Georgia becoming one of the worst countries in terms of doing business, becoming one of the best around the world. There is just one way to implementing this entirely, is that next year, that's my vision, because that's how election cycles work. After the elections, you do all the things that are unpopular, then you have still time to be a nice guy. So after the elections, I'm sure that this will come even down. So we'll cover the entire segment in one way or another. And at the end of the day, for that to be really implemented, that's how it happened in Georgia. Not creating those bills and not complying will become a criminal offense. And that's so this is something that I'm absolutely sure. So having said that, we feel that these people who need to be compliant with GST, even though they don't, usually their literacy level, financial and tech literacy level is low. They don't have processes in place. They're doing pen and paper. So we see this as the most immediate and urgent pain and risk, existential threat for them, and they will realize it within the next few months, actually. So this market is shaking up just now. But on top of that, once to digitize those operations, that means that, and I mentioned it earlier, this means that they would now be able to tap into the digital economy. ONDC is one of the greatest initiatives I've seen around the world. If you're familiar with ONDC initiative.
Indeed.
like it's gonna democratize and create a one of its kind, entirely democratic, digital, equitable economy. So that's just amazing. But again, to do that, people need financing. As a business owner, whether a business manager, you need to be able to manage your cash flow, because cash is often called the blood business. So if you run out of cash, like things are really bad, and you need that also to grow and also to maintain viability on the operational level day to day. And once those things go online, the accessibility of capital and the price of capital for these smaller guys, those pen and paper legacy businesses, will be much, much better. So basically, we are helping them. That's our vision, to fit into that and support this digitization of the small businesses here in India and also in the entire South and Southeast Asia. But now we decided the way to solve the immediate pain point and this threat that small businesses face is through this digitizing their paperwork, GST billing, and all the documents that are involved, and being compliant with day-to-day operations with the requirements they're getting.
Got it. No, I think it is definitely in need of the hour given where the market is right now. And digitization has slowly begun due to the advent of platforms like India Stack and all of that. But it has still some miles to go, and these kind of businesses like and initiatives that you have taken, I think, will definitely play a good role in digitizing these businesses and helping them leverage those digitization essentially, to amplify their businesses further. Having said that, right? You have been essentially, you established Kernel Finance in Georgia first, and then moved to India, and now you're also planning to expand to Southeast Asia. So how do you see the evolution of all the economies, let's say across India vis-a-vis the other Southeast Asian economics, vis-a-vis the economy at Georgia, right? So how are the flavors different in each places?
Yes, so that also has to do with my vision of the world and my perception of how the world is and where it's going. So I believe that the West, talking US, UK, Western Europe, the developed world, so to say, has reached its peak. And I believe that the most of the development is going to happen in the global South for the next few decades. Africa's a bit behind. It's going to catch up probably within the next 30, 50 years. But I believe that India is the leader in this global South, together with Brazil probably. That is driving the development and where the most of this development and digitization is happening. So what I see here in South and Southeast Asia, especially in India, is that, let's say, financial. In Europe, you have financial system that has been there for centuries. So it's old school, and it is made for the problems of the past, and really hard to adapt for the new modern tech and modern requirements of modern digital. What India is doing entirely differently is it's running like a startup, because the products, we can call it India's tech products, let's say. The services and products and frameworks that are built here are based on the actual requirements and needs of modern customers, because these existing old school structures are not there. So in terms of cost and efficiency, I believe that this is much, much higher than the West had in a very, very short period of time. UPI, I have nowhere encountered such amazing peer-to-peer transaction system as UPI. Like Apple Pay is better for paying merchants, in my opinion, like it's more convenient. For peer-to-peer transaction, that's absolutely amazing. And I do indeed. India is leading the way, and the rest of the region is gonna follow India's suit in two main directions. I would say that would be the building this financial system and digitization, and implementing the tax systems, because I believe that tax system is extremely important for the development of the country. And for those two things, health system is more on the government, the financial services, access to capital, digitization, all those things are on the private sector side. And I believe that the amazing mix in this region are amazing potential. So it's entirely different in terms of customer behavior and what people expect from you. Also in Georgia, compared to Georgia, but Georgia is also an emerging country. But compared to the Western, like Western Europe, US, Canada, the expectations of the customers and behavior of the customers is entirely different. So this is going to be really, really interesting.
Indeed. And I think something that I personally am really excited about from a world economy perspective, I'm really looking forward to see how Brazil shapes up vis-a-vis India, and then maybe a decade down the line, how differently does African economy kind of evolve given the state that it currently is in. I think it'll be super exciting to see, will it just templatize the models used by Brazil, India, and other Southeast Asian countries, or it'll kind of have a different approach given that I would say the social dynamics are a lot more different. I would say, I mean, there are still some similarities that you can draw between a country like India, Philippines, and a few other Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, as well as I'm not really sure on if I can comment, if I can make the same comment with between India and Brazil, that there are some parallels that can be drawn. But I think Africa is is a space that is a lot more different than all of these countries are. So I'm very keen and very curious to see how that evolves. Any specific views on how do you see the African ecosystem evolving?
Yeah, I think that African economy, it's going to take a bit more time, in my opinion, because I believe that there's no single country in Africa that's going to take this kind of lead, and it needs to be kind of more united economic-wise, policy-wise, like in many.
True.
And I believe it's going to take a bit more time. And how I think it's shaping up, so basically you have these economies of the past, of present, which present is always past, right? So which is the nowadays developed economies. And Global South countries, South and Southeast Asia, alongside LATAM, are building on top of that. In my opinion, South and Southeast Asia are doing a better job, but that doesn't really matter. So they are building on top of those experiences and bringing in the new requirements, new reality. And I think that after this development slows down in, 20, 30 years, that Africa will be building on top of those learnings to use the templates which are useful, but develop some things that work specifically for that, I believe. And that's what South and Southeast Asia and generally emerging markets are doing right now. So that's why I'm super excited.
Understood. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I probably agree with you on all of the stuff that you said, right? I mean, it is probably very likely that they will probably pick up a few of the templates that were really successful, and since they might have their own unique needs, they might actually have their own few tweaks, so I should say, to it. Having said that, right, coming back to the MSME ecosystem and specifically addressing one of the major issues that MSMEs, especially in India, are facing is working capital financing, right? I think that's a major challenge given the fact that you can say lack of data or lack of cash flow data specifically that would actually lead to profitable or affordable working capital financing is still a challenge for a lot of MSMEs. Having said that, right, if you were to kind of explain the concept of working capital financing to let's say a 5-year-old kid, I know it's a bit more difficult because there wouldn't be a lot of parallels to draw, but let's give it a shot. How would you explain working capital like I'm a 5-year-old?
Okay, so you love the candies, right? So when we go to the store and we buy the candies, but before we buy that, our good friend, the owner of the Kirana store, let's call it Anam, for example, is buying that from somebody else. So if but he gets money after we buy from him, right? So sometimes he needs to ask somebody for the money to get those candies, and so that we can have it, we can buy that, and he can then return the money that he owes his friend.
I think that was brilliant. I probably understood that given the fact that I was assuming the role of 5-year-old, I think that was very, very well explained. Kudos to you on that. Let's kind of add a layer of complexity. Let's add a layer of complexity and try to explain this to someone who's just about getting out of the 12th grade. How would you explain working capital financing to them?
From the 12th grade, I'm not sure what is the level of understanding business for a 12th grader here in India, but I'll try my best. So to add a bit of complexity on top of that is, if you are you're buying things, and from where you're buying, they need to get those things, and they also have other expenses. So they have a person who is running the store, and they have electricity bills, they have all different things, and sometimes it is hard for them to manage money. So basically, there are moments in time when they are unable to pay for their bills, for their employees, for their suppliers, whoever is giving them products. So they sometimes need to borrow money in order to be able to meet those small cash crisis that they face, so that they are able to also go and not lose you when you go there to buy that same candy, so that they don't have it. So they need to borrow money and then return it back once you buy it.
No, I think that's perfect. That was indeed very well explained, and I don't think it could get easier than that. I mean, I would have probably asked you to explain it to me like I'm at a higher level, probably at a professional level, but I think that is already done. I don't see a challenge, or maybe I'm a bit naive. Do you think we should add another layer of complexity here?
The only thing is to understand the challenges with working capital. So I think that's important.
Exactly.
Another layer of complexity here. I won't dive too deep into that, but the biggest challenge, especially in these kinds of markets, in case of this kind of unorganized pen and paper traditional businesses, the biggest issue is actually projection of that cash flow. Because when you need working capital, you need to know when you're gonna need working capital, and you need to get a loan. You cannot get a loan in under 4 days. Business loan, I don't think that you can. That talks a lot about the inefficiency on the lender's side, but that's been my experience and understanding so far with all the experiments that we've done in that regard. So you need to really have a really good cash flow planning and forecasting. So if you don't have that, then you're gonna get stuck in one moment or another. So I believe that digitization also helps you to reflect on the data from the previous months and identify how the outstandings have been behaving. Also, people lose track of the receivables they have because they're running this, backup books and catch-up books and cash flow books, and their consolidation for the father who needs to approve end of every month. So this is complicated. So I believe that this is one important piece of that. Another important piece is that, again, the data. So if the data is there, if you have established relation with the financial institution, then you're able to get that money quick, on demand, low interest, return that and use that working capital. Because what happens nowadays, you ask your cousin or your neighbor or a friend or somebody, which at the end of the day is inconvenient, inefficient. If you get a percent loan, then it's much higher than you get. So it can really ruin the business. So that's just briefly what I wanted to add.
No, perfect. I think that makes sense. And I think given the fact that, as you rightly said, right, there are a lot of kacha books and those kind of records, pen and paper records maintained by MSME owners across India, it really becomes very difficult to underwrite them from a lender's perspective, right?
Right.
And getting all that data, digitizing it, processing it, adds a lot of cost, which essentially chews into the revenue that they are making, which again is very thin margins that they are working at, specifically the lenders that are working with these kind of segments, because they're also borrowing capital at a higher cost, as well, given the fact that they're being exposed to a more unorganized market. So it kind of becomes a vicious circle. So it is basically imperative for growing economies like India and other Southeast Asian countries to have an entire base of these customers digitized grounds up, and that is basically a very difficult and dirty work, because it's going to take feet on street. It's not going to be immediate, right? It's going to take at least half a decade to get 50% of the industry even digitized, close to 50%. I'm being a lot more free over here while kind of giving this, but yeah, it'll definitely take that much time, if not more.
Yeah.
And I think that is companies like Kernel Finance and a lot more other players are needed to do this digitalization activity and getting them on board. So yeah, I mean, kudos to you for starting building in this idea and kind of believing in the problem statement in the first place. It is definitely a daunting one to say the least. I mean, it is one of the most daunting problem statements.
Yes, yeah. So I think that, my view again, because of what I see on the kind of, to have a bit of more global view, is that digitization is gonna happen a bit faster. It's gonna be really, really painful. And those who won't be able to adapt, they're gonna really die out, those small businesses, which is, again, really painful, but that's how the world works, and especially implication of that. And I believe that the amount of catch-up books is gonna decline significantly. If it's now, let's say, 70% catch-up, it should shift, become 30, and I see that happening within 3, 4, maximum 5 years. I believe that it will entirely shift. Apart from some specific segments, segments won't, but mostly that's how we see it develop. So again, if the small businesses really understand that digitizing, paying taxes, and doing this in a wide way, transparent way, at the end of the day, long term, improves their business and their chances of prospering and success. I believe that this has to do a lot with the education, and it comes with the change of generation also. Like if you're talking to somebody in the 60s and you're talking to him about digitization, you might get hit with a stick in your head, right? But if you're talking who is running the business, it becomes much more easier. He would need to convince his father at the end of the day, but he's more open to utilizing these digital technologies to generally the true openness is there. So I believe this shift of the generational shift is really, really important here. And India being at this scale, one of the best things about India, what makes me really, really bullish, is the average age of India. It's under 30 years, 28, 29, that range. Meaning that more and more people who are open to innovation, have more education and access to information on the internet, those people are come into power, so to say, managing businesses, starting businesses, taking over that. So I believe that this process will only speed up.
Definitely. But you did make me feel old by saying the last statement though. Anyways, having said that, right, I think you are right. I might have not considered this factor earlier when I made that statement. Given the fact that younger workforce is coming into play and more younger business owners are taking over the generational businesses as well, I think digitalization might actually speed up, given the affinity of those specific age group. Having said that, right, how do you see emerging technologies playing a role in enabling digitization? maybe let's talk a bit about AI over here, since it's probably the hot topic of every LinkedIn post that you see, right? Everyone's talking about it, everyone knows about it, and all of that. So, how do you see that kind of affecting this entire segment as such?
Yeah, it's still very early days, I would say, for AI. It's for this kind of breakthrough AI, which is accessible for simple people like us. So that's early days, but I believe that on top of that will be... So there will be multiple ways to communicate with AI. Like nowadays, with help of ChatGPT and Bard, you can just type in the text, talk to them like to a human, and get the answers to whatever you want, whether that's research, whether that's a post, like whatever that is, right? But on top of that, like we see the layer where you can generate videos, you can generate any kind of content, the paintings. Like the other day, I saw an 8-minute movie entirely generated by AI with just initial prompt, which was one of the probably best movies about aliens invading Earth I have ever seen. It was just 8 minutes, but it was like amazing, like totally amazing. So those things are happening. I doing music, lots of other stuff, and as it gets more and more accessible, as we start talking to the AI, as we start talking to the machines, and again, the barrier here might be English versus Hindi, because there's this misperception that everybody speaks English in India, but in business circles, yes, but not on the regular middle class, lower middle class level. But again, the data is big enough to convert also Hindi, and once the people will be able to talk and interact with machines verbally, I believe that this will be a huge shift, right? So if that's indeed talking AI, so I think that they will just have the urge to see this brave new world, this something amazing, happening. Older generation, I think it will be a bit scary. So that's what they show. In terms of generally digitizing, I think the India SME sector, again, not just SME sector, but also like individuals and, getting access, is one is financial inclusion, which UPI is an amazing step forward again. And another, I need to go in DC because I'm a huge fan. I believe that for small businesses to digitize, this will be the biggest push, because
Definitely.
suddenly you as a small store owner are able to go online and to offer your products and services to the entire country, in a sense, right? So this means that people will become more open to digitization, and I think that this is gonna play the biggest role. These two India stacks are gonna play the biggest role within the next 5 to 10 years in terms of digitizing the small business sector.
Definitely. I think the current situation has me very excited about the future. I think, given the fact the ONDC, what you said about ONDC, right? The ability to get discovered across India is a really powerful tool that a small business person will essentially, have, right? The discoverability over there, and given the fact that digitization is already underway, that could essentially lead to an increased capacity and increased demand for goods across the country. Maybe, specifically in a country like India, I don't normally like to compare India to one single country. I compare India normally to something like in Europe, right? Because that is plainly coming from the fact that if you pass the breadth of Europe and the kind of cultural shifts and differences you see, you would see a very similar cultural shift if you go from Kanyakumari in the south to, let's say, even Maharashtra. Like, you would see 4 to 5 different cultural shifts, and every 100 kilometers you would see a new language. But what essentially ONDC is doing for a country with such diversity is that someone sitting in Maharashtra or in Mumbai, for example, who essentially has a hometown in Orissa, if that person is missing some specific delicacy of Orissa that is not available in Mumbai, with the power of ONDC or a platform like that, he's able to order that and get it delivered to his doorstep in maybe a day. And the even more important over here is the ability of small businesses sitting in rural areas of Bihar, or let's say Jharkhand, or whatever, building their handicrafts and building specialty items that are not available across the country because there was no distribution network for that earlier, now being discovered by people across the country and ordered and getting orders from there, right? I mean, that is essentially a game changer in itself.
And I entirely agree. And that's what makes me so excited about this framework. On top of that, I would add just a small kind of flavor to that.
Sure.
Is what I've seen is India, even in business, is a really traditional society and hierarchy, right? So you have a business, you have a trader whose father and his grandfather have been operating before him, and there are long-standing relations with his specific network. So somebody who has a better product, is more efficient, is better at doing business, cannot compete because the guy has these relations with his customers, suppliers over generations, right? And this inequality basically in a sense will be eliminated by making all this digital. So this is something that I think that will be also a fundamental shift, that somebody new coming to the business will have the ability to compete and to grow, and only the fittest will survive, like the rule of the jungle. But that's how the business landscape works in India, right? It's extremely competitive.
Agreed.
So I believe that only the best who are doing the best product, delivering the best value to the customers, they should be able to get across and grow for the economy to really achieve high efficiency, high output. And I believe that solving for that inefficiency or inequality or inequity will be one of the driving forces of the Indian economy in the future. So that's one of the reasons I'm so bullish.
Got it.
Well,
I completely agree. I completely agree with what you're saying, right? I think it'll actually add that layer of, I would say, discoverability and power, right? So discoverability of suppliers other than the ones present in local areas would also give these MSMEs more power. So I completely agree with you. And I think having said that, right, I think this how do you essentially see the entire, let's say, MSME industry across outside India also evolving over a period of 5 years? Let's talk a bit more specifically about the Southeast Asian countries, like vis-a-vis India.
So there are of course similarities and there are differences. So my feeling is that Indonesia, especially, they're doing a really good job in few areas, but it's really similar in many dynamics. It's really similar to. So I believe that India is about 5 years ahead in terms of, especially on this side, like small business digitization and stuff. And their market, their smaller businesses, pen and paper guys, sketchbooks, backups, all those things are really, really similar. And I think that India is a few years ahead. So I think within the next 5 years, they're going to find themselves in the same spot that India's small businesses are right now. Experience I've had, because we also expanded to Philippines, we have a couple of dozen thousand users there. In Philippines, it's a bit different again, but I believe that digitization is inevitable, and with the pace the world is developing, and with the governments of this specific region now realizing that it's essential to collect taxes and digitize, I believe that this is going to happen within the next 5 years. And whatever India does successfully, the entire region looks up to it, and they will try to replicate it and add on top their own flavors, of course, but replicate the success. Whatever succeed, whatever doesn't succeed, then learn out of that. So again, the reason why, apart among many other reasons why we decided to be in India today and build our business here, is that we see that India is really the leader of the entire region. And whatever happens in India, then the rest is going to follow. Maybe not exactly the same path, but it's going to be really, really simple. and I believe India is a bit ahead in the region.
Got it. On that note, I think I would like to close this segment. Thank you so much. I think it has been very interesting talking to you, and I think I've learned a few things myself as well. So thank you so much for your insights.
Amazing. Amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Having said that, right, let's get on to the final and my favorite segment called the rapid fire round. Hello and welcome back to the final round with Mr. Beka from Kernel Finance. This is one of my favorite rounds called the rapid fire. Basically, just 4 to 5 quick questions, and you have to answer that with utmost dedication to candidness and nothing else, right? You won't get a lot of time to think.
Yeah.
So, keeping that in mind, let's just get started with it. What has been your favorite book throughout your entrepreneurial journey?
That definitely would be Hard Things About How Things by Ben Horowitz.
Okay. Interesting.
That's my favorite one, like favorite business book ever. If you're a CEO, it's a must read.
Perfect. I think I'll also definitely give it a read. Although I'm not a CEO yet, but I do aspire. So
yeah. Like that's like literally like I've been reading quite some bit, but I think that the way he shares he's a legendary CEO and now a legendary investor. So the way he tells the story, and you basically can relate. Being a CEO, I could relate to many things that he's saying, and has been amazing inspiration and even relief in the hard times. So I'd recommend that to everybody.
Definitely. I think all the founders in the audience should definitely take a note of this. Having said that, right on to the next question. What is the time do you wake up?
Usually it depends where I am. When I'm in Georgia, it's early. When I'm here in India, it's again like 8:30, but my biological clock, it gets screwed up from time to time when I travel. But like 8 is the latest I get up.
So, perfect. Having said that, right, being a founder, I think work is always 24/7 hours on your mind, right? So how do you disconnect from work? What is your go-to method to disconnect?
I would say walking for me is a big part of that. So just walking and, just trying to be present in the moment. And again, like just having some casual talk, maybe with a stranger, maybe with friends, maybe with family, like that's really usually refreshing for me. Just sitting down and chatting about things unrelated to the business, and from time to time I just really refreshing.
Got it. Having said that, right, I mean, you have traveled a lot across, right? I mean, from Georgia, India, and I'm sure a few of the Southeast Asian countries as well, and other destinations too. So what has been your what's your favorite vacation destination though? I mean, business travels aside.
So that would be high up in the mountains in Georgia. I have a village there, and there's a small hut where it's like I feel that I'm part of the nature like entirely. So this is the place where at least for 5 days for a week, at least once a year I try to go there. Just be there. Just read, walk in the forest, enjoy. So that's my go-to kind of relax.
That sounds wonderful.
So that's like greenness, lots of water, rivers flowing from all sides, like a couple of rivers in the village. So that's the place that is really dear to my heart. So
just hearing that is making me want to go there. Maybe once when I visit Georgia, I'll definitely.
Actually, I'm going back to Georgia for a couple of weeks now, and I'm gonna pay a visit to my village there up in
awesome
a few days.
Awesome. So you're probably looking forward to a wonderful time there. Having said that, what is your guilty pleasure? One guilty pleasure.
Oh, McDonald's. I love burgers, and it's been hard here. Actually, I must admit in India because burgers are already always made out of chicken. Like I've got I know a couple of spots where I make it out of mutton, but usually it's always chicken. And for me, a chicken burger is not a burger. A chicken burger is a chicken sandwich. A burger is something else. So this says again, like I do love Indian food, but from time to time I just need to eat a lot of McDonald's. Then feel guilty.
Gotcha. And having said that, right, you said one of your favorite books earlier, right? So what essentially is a favorite quote? If it's out of that book or somewhere else, what's your favorite quote?
Oh, actually, I don't have a quote. I would say an idea from my, not business, but generally one of my favorite written books is that a human being has really only one freedom, and it's his attitude. So whatever is happening around, you often don't have like the idea being that you don't have control of many things.
True.
There might be many demanding situations, many happy situations, etc. But the only thing that is unique with this, which is ultimate freedom, actually, and liberty, is the attitude in this situation. So, especially in many moments in life, this has been something that inspired me and pushed me to go forward against all odds. So, I would like that.
Got it. Having said that, one last question before we close for the day. What is one thing that you regret not doing as a founder?
As a founder?
Yeah.
Oh. That's
tricky one.
That's a tricky one. Yeah, okay, I'll say that. I think I got it. So that's not something that I did do as a founder, but something I didn't do earlier in my life. I never learned to code, so I would never be an engineer. But if I knew how to code, I would. It would be a really amazing skill for me. But too late to learn. Working with not just the databases, but generally developing in more depth the computational thinking. I believe that being a tech founder in tech, you need that. I do have. I've been strong in math, and I do have it at certain level. But if I had been able to code, I believe that would help me a lot in terms of solving complex problems, not just in tech or product, but generally in life. So that's something I regret from my earlier years.
Understood. No, I think coding nowadays has become an essential skill, even if you are. Whether you're a tech person or not, I mean, it is almost like a life skill, right? And coming from a non-tech background, a lot of times when I'm working, like in my even role at wherever I used to work at earlier as well, and now I have to deal with a lot of technical jargon and APIs and all of that stuff. So it helps at least if you're able to read code, right? I mean, the future is that, given the fact that we are moving towards a digital age, I think there has to be some kind of transformation of skill sets. There cannot be someone who is completely non-code, someone who does not even understand technology working. Probably 5 years down the line, I don't even see those kind of people being able to sustain much longer in the environment.
Totally. And AI might be a revolutionary tool in regards but again, for that, and I believe at some extent I'm strong at computational thinking generally, but I believe that if you're phrase and explain in depth to the AI what you want, I think that really soon it will be able to do it, most of it, and then you will need just one good engineer to just go through that, make it more human, so to say. And
got it. Now, just for the parting words for our audiences, what is one piece of life advice that you'd like to give?
It's hard to pick one, but I would say the one piece would be always stay true to yourself and to your beliefs and to your values. Like those things also evolve as we do, but just being honest with yourself and having that feeling, I think that's the best thing in the world that nothing can bypass, so to say. So just stay true to yourselves. I would say that's the biggest one I have on the emotional side. And because you asked, I'm gonna just mention one piece of kind of life advice I got early in my life. Was my teacher actually, and he told me that his only fear was that I wouldn't dream to be big enough, and I would dream little and I would achieve it, and then I would get really, really bored with my life. So I've been trying to dream big, and I think that this is a really important quality for any entrepreneur. So yeah, that would be Shield.
No, I think that was really inspiring. I'm sure you're going to motivate a lot of our audiences in doing something big. Having said that, thank you so much, Beka. It was really a pleasure speaking with you, and it was really an insightful conversation indeed. Thank you so much.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
Thank you.